It's now time for our question and answer session with Dr. Goodall. And on that note, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator. She's a graduate of Concordia's Departments of Journalism and Communication Studies and a longtime reporter at CTV News Montreal. You may recognize her face. So please welcome Caroline Van Vlaardingen to the stage.
Thank you, Bram. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Goodall. Such a pleasure to sit here with you. I actually met you in 1993, and you wrote a lovely thing in a book of mine, and I read it and it inspires me, as you have inspired so many women. And the word inspiration, I think, is a word that we can all agree on. You are an inspiration to men and women around the world. Perhaps it's a word that you get tired of hearing, but it really does fit. And I guess the first question I'd like to ask you to get things started, you talk about your mother and how supportive she was, what a great figure she was in your life. I would like to ask you about the role of women supporting women. You broke through into a male-dominated scientific field at a time where there probably weren't many women working at Cambridge or trying to get doctorates, and you really created new rules of scientific exploration and scientific analysis by naming the chimpanzees. I'm wondering about whether or not you felt that, or you feel that looking back, women sometimes have to change rules in order to advance areas where they have trouble going forward. Hillary Clinton was here just a week ago, and she talked about this great untapped potential of women in the world. And she talked about what a great difference it would make if more women rose to the tops of their fields. You talked about that female crow developing her tool. How do you feel about the role of women in advancing society and perhaps taking us in a different direction than we've been going?
Well, there's no question we're different. And I think, the traditional role of the woman being the mother, the nurturer of the family, that's part of what we are. And one of the things which I'm really glad is, I think we're moving away from, is that because of this male-dominated world, the women who made it and got in and competed were in a way more masculine than the males to get there. And that meant that all the qualities that I feel that we can bring to science or to anything else were trampled down. And now I think we've got past that. And I think women are emerging, in their own right without feeling they have to outcompete males in, aggression and stuff like that. That's what I hope. Because, I think it is that nurturing, empathetic side of women that can really make a difference. But I was lucky. I never had to compete to get into this world at all. And I had huge help from every single male along the road.
Who were your role models growing up? You talked about reading that Tarzan book and how that inspired you to want to get closer to nature. You had a love of animals, but do you remember having role models yourself?
Well, not really. I mean, they were mostly in books. Dr. Dolittle was a real role model for me. And Tarzan, if I look back now, and we thought in a different way back then. If I look at Tarzan now, it's filled with killing and bloodshed, and it's a very violent book, actually. But who were my role models? It was my family, really.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you had a loving mother who supported you in so many ways.
And reading books about the early explorers and thinking how lucky they were, and that's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever imagine when you went to Gombe that first time in 1960, was it, that you would build an entire career on that trip?
I didn't think about it at all. I was just so amazed that it was me, and I was going, and I was on the boat, and I was getting to this forest, and That was all I thought about was, how will I find the chimpanzees in these forests and valleys and just me? How will I possibly find them and learn about them?
Well, it must have felt dangerous to you at times. Or we've seen the dangers, or not the dangers, but the damage that chimpanzees can cause to humans if there's a bad situation. So were you ever fearful for your safety in those early days? Did you worry that you could be attacked, or what did you do to protect yourself?
Yeah, there were times when, when the chimpanzees stopped running away from me, they went through a belligerent time and they treated me as though I was a predator. And it was a bit scary. And, there'd be these, they look very big up in the trees and all their hair bristling and swaying like this and yelling at me. So I just pretended I wasn't interested in them. I dug holes in the ground. I pretended to eat leaves. And I thought, well, they'll get bored. And they did. And gradually they thought, oh, well, she's not going to go away. We're stuck with her, but she doesn't seem that bad after all. So.
Someone asked me to ask you this. What do chimpanzees smell like? Do they have a smell, a particular smell?
Not like gorillas. Gorillas have that pungent smell of sweat. Chimpanzees smell really nice. I can't describe it. They're just, they don't have a strong smell at all. Not like the cats.
The cats? Which
cats and dogs,
Oh,
they have strong smells. But by the way, what you said just then is an important point about the chimps being violent. And most of the things that we read about are pets who turn on their owners. And, we're fighting to make it illegal to have chimpanzees as pets. Because, when they get to adolescence, 8, 9, they're like 5 times stronger than we are. And they don't want to be a pet in a house. And this is when you get these horrible attacks. Same with circuses and advertising. They look cute and sweet, but then they grow up and they're not amenable anymore unless you put shock collars on them, pull their teeth out, and that's what people have done in entertainment. It's very cruel.
And of course, your message about animals and entertainment is far beyond chimpanzees, and it's about all. Do you have feelings about the marine worlds of the world and
Absolutely.
all of those?
Absolutely. Yes, I talked about the octopus already.
Yes.
And, I was with Sylvia Earle the other day, and she says, the fish, the overfishing, she said, this is the bushmeat of the sea, and people aren't realizing the fact that we're overfishing and the pollution coming into the sea. She said the sea is so damaged and so fragile now. She's very passionate about that. And she said the fish have personalities, and there are some fish that she always goes to the same place, and this fish will come out to meet her, and if she swims around a rock, he'll swim after her. So we think of fish as, I think the octopus is helping us to understand we just have so much to learn, and we've been so arrogant, and a different kind of intelligence. You
talked about when you flew over Gombe in the 1980s, was it?
Early 90s.
Early 90s,
91,
and you
92.
were so shocked at the devastation and how much has grown back in 10 years. That's an amazing story of hope. Have you, though, ever felt that it was hopeless? Have you ever lost hope at any point in your life and felt, how do I resist this amazing tide of technology and advancement and devastation to the world's resources? Have you ever felt like you were losing hope?
I felt really depressed and, faced with some of these big, huge developments that are going on, and how the companies, the industry is resisting all the different people who are standing up and trying to protect, like the tar sands, like the pipeline, like the fracking. These things are horrendous and awful, and agribusiness and the intensive farms. And the only thing is, it's all the students. It's not their responsibility, it's ours. But to empower the young people to carry on and not to give up. Rachel Carson, she is the perfect example. She was battered down, she was sworn at, she was shouted at, she was threatened by industry, and she went on and on and on about DDT and what it was doing to the environment. Even when she had cancer, She wouldn't tell anyone because she said, well, if I tell them I've got cancer, they'll say, I'm just doing this because I've got cancer. So she didn't tell anyone. And she won. So that's what it takes. And it doesn't have to be any more one person alone. It can be a collective, body of young people around the world that say, I won't give up. I lose this demonstration, I'll demonstrate again. I'll get more people. We will win. We will stop buying from these companies that are doing things in an ethically irresponsible way. We will, stand up against our governments when they back industry.
Speaking of governments, we're in the midst of a provincial election campaign here right now in Quebec. We're going to the polls in another week and a half, 2 weeks. One of the issues that has come up, although it's been overshadowed by other issues, is the development of Quebec's northern regions, the Plan Nord, and there are plans to look for oil and also to begin mining there. Do you have any advice to our government officials and leaders before that plan comes to fruition, if it does?
Well, to listen to have really good environment assessment plans made, and to listen to the people who live there and who know and whose lives are at stake. But there is some mentality which I find so shocking. And I'll give you an example. This isn't your particular example, but it's one of the genetically modified crop companies, not Monsanto actually, but another one. And they were doing some test crops in one of the Hawaiian Islands because they can get 3 crops a year instead of 2 because of the climate. And some of the doctors in the nearby town or the nearby island, I can't remember now, started getting worried because there were so many babies they got together and being born deformed and so many more allergies than they remembered and so many problems, health problems. Could it be when the prevailing wind brought the chemicals that were being sprayed on these crops? So they sent a delegation to find out what the chemical was so that they could, investigate. And the delegation was sent back, no, we can't tell you. So an investigative journalist went in, and on camera is this manager standing up and saying, you don't seem to understand, this is a competitive business. There's no way we are going to tell you what chemical we're using. In other words, to hell with all your babies that are getting deformed. We don't care about that. We care about the bottom line. That's what we've got to fight.
You have a milestone birthday coming up, which was mentioned, and you have achieved so much already. But what are the things that are still on your to-do list? What would you like to do that you haven't done yet? What have you got left to do?
Well, there are things and places I'd like to go, but I don't suppose there's time. What I'd like to do that I haven't done is really to do what I'm doing, but do more of it, do it in more places.
How can you beat 360 days a year? You're already traveling.
I don't know.
You'll find a way.
It's really bringing up the new generation and getting, young leaders. We have Roots and Shoots young leaders. And when we bring them together, it's magical. And we've just been offered an opportunity 3 times a year to bring selected young leaders together in Windsor Castle with money from the royal family for a week. And, we're just starting this with the Roots and Shoots mentors, the adults who helped us start it. And then it will be the young leaders, students 18 to 24. And when you get those young people together, these people who've stood out as leaders, it's magic. And this is why we try to make partners. I mean, I'd love to partner with these young people from Concordia. So, you do your sustainable stuff with the Roots and Shoots umbrella added so that we can share what you're doing. And there's so much support from numbers. So I don't think I have time to do any more than I'm doing. But it's just inspiring more people. The thing is, as you get older, You know, I guess becoming 80, I don't feel any different, but obviously I might have another 10 years to live. It could be 15, it could be 2, but whatever it is, each year takes me closer to this end, right? And therefore, there's an urgency to do more.
Right.
And luckily, so far, I've got healthy and
An astounding energy. Where's that from? Is that DNA, or do you do something special?
well, my father had a very good constitution. It's about the one thing I inherited from him. Everything else was mum. But I get a lot of inspiration from youth and energy, because when young people know the problems and we listen to them and they are empowered to take action, which Roots Institute is all about, empowering young people to take action. And it's fascinating to me to go around the world and to find the different causes that young people, things that you would never have thought of that concern them. And then we help them to do something about it.
So they're opening your eyes all the time,
yes,
too.
of course, like the animals too. You know, that's, I mean, I think now, any student here, what an exciting life you have ahead of you, and so many challenges, but more and more and more support so that you won't give up and you won't give in, and we will break through. Because we must.
As you're speaking, I think the word that comes to mind is la relève. You know, the changing of the guard. There has to be a new generation, right, to take over. What do you do for fun when you're not talking about all of these doom and gloom scenarios?
I have lots of fun.
What do you do for
You
fun?
can't
Share that
live
with
without-
us.
Well, you know, we have, when I get into a city, we very often have what we call a fudge party, and a fudge is a friend of Jane's. So whereas these birthday things, I can't stand the idea of galas with, you know, all this stuff, but getting together with some friends with a glass of red wine or some scotch, telling stories, campfires, you know, all this kind of thing. When I'm at home in England, the house I grew up in, my sister lives there, walking with the dog, that's my best relaxation. You know, you have to laugh, you have to have fun.
You have a great sense of humor. I researched you a little bit online, and you have such a great sense of humor. And do you think that's part of what also helps you to deal with all of this? And
you have to be able to laugh at yourself.
you don't take yourself very seriously,
No,
even
I
though you
don't.
are such an icon.
But you say I'm an icon, that's what you perceive. But I know perfectly well I'm just me. And you know, how this icon has got out there, I really don't know. So I'm in awe of that icon too. I have to try and live up to it.
Yes. Well, they say it's very dangerous to believe in your own iconry too, so you're probably doing the right thing by not quite associating yourself with that Dr. Jane Goodall.
No, there's two people.
Right.
Silly me, and that one out there.
You've done so much in your life. Do you have any regrets at all? Things that you did that you would do differently now? Is there anything that you would change?
I think there's only one thing, but I don't know if it was a mistake or not. It probably wasn't. You know, I had the 2 husbands, and
One was a Dutchman, I believe,
yes,
wasn't he?
Hugo and I
Yes.
got divorced because we simply couldn't get on anymore. We had an 8-year-old son, and I think it harmed him. But on the other hand, if we'd stayed together with all this constant bickering, it was all over money. It was all over money. Because for Hugo, money was an end in itself. For me, it was always a means. So we were always quarreling over what money this was used for and what this money was used for and what that. And it just got awful. But I think it probably would have been worse for Grub if we had stuck it out. I don't know, though. I just wish it hadn't had to happen. That's my only regret, really.
So, words of advice to couples: don't argue over money, even
Well,
though it's a
don't marry if you have a completely different attitude to money.
You have written so many books and articles. You are a prolific writer. Your writing is absolutely beautiful. Do you ever have writer's block? Do you ever feel like I have nothing left to say? I have said it all, or is there always something more to say?
I've got masses more to say. You know, this book, Seeds of Hope, it's up
Yes.
there. That comes out on my birthday, but you can get it here now, apparently.
Okay.
But
We'll all
it
be
comes
buying a
out on
copy.
the 1st, and it's taken a long time to do, and people say, why are you writing about plants? Well, the last book I did is called Hope for Animals and Their World, and that is so inspirational because every single chapter is about an animal that wouldn't be with us if it wasn't for a group of dedicated, passionate people. I think the one maybe is closest to here is the whooping crane, which, you know, winters up in Canada, in Woods Buffalo Park. And that was down to 12 birds. And these people decided, you know, they were going to really have a very, very strong campaign. So they nurtured the one flock. And then there's another one, Joe Duff, who's in Toronto, has trained these young birds to follow an ultralight. So they're going on a different migration route. They're going down to Louisiana now, and then back up to Wisconsin. And, you know, this is all real inspirational stuff.
So lots more books ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, so I did a whole chunk for that book about plants rescued from extinction, but the publisher said it was too long. So I had all this stuff and all these botanists who've been so helpful and so excited we're going to go in one of Dr. Jane's books. And I felt awful. So I thought, well, I'll make just a little thin book and maybe a Botanical Gardens will publish it, you know? But it was literally as though the plants put roots into my brain and said, Jane, you've been working all your life for animals, it's our turn now. And so that book is exploring and I learned so much. It was really, really a fascinating journey.
There are so many subjects within the animal and plant world to write about, but are there other subjects that interest you as well that you would like to have a whole other life to devote to? Are there other things that have fascinated you that you just haven't had time to explore?
Well, yes, I would. You know, I told you well, I maybe didn't, but I'm really interested in early childhood development in humans just because of what I've learned from the chimps. And for a long time, that was the main topic of my lectures, was early childhood development, working with people like Bowlby and some of those psychologists. So, you know, that would be a whole other life. But I don't have that.
Well, do you believe in reincarnation?
Well, I cannot believe there's nothing. But the way I look at it is that, you know, you get there. To me, it's kind of an adventure to find out what happens. And what happens will either be nothing, in which case it won't matter, or it'll be something which will be fascinating to explore. So whichever way, it doesn't really matter. Somehow.
Well, we hope you stick around a lot longer, but it would be nice to see you come back in another form too.
Somebody said the other day, a question from an audience like this, well, there seems to have been stages in your life. You just neatly compartments, you know, you did this and you did that. What's the next one? And I said, well, I suppose it's dying. There was dead silence. Well, don't you agree?
No, we
all
disagree.
die.
I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Merci encore de votre présence parmi nous ce soir. Thank you, of course, to our esteemed guest, Dr. Goodall, for her inspiring words, to Caroline Van Vlaardingen for moderating this portion. Thank you all.